gets better.
I know you've heard it before, but it gets better.
I'm Susie McMonagle, and I'm in a show. I'm in Billy Elliot. I played Mrs. Wilkinson in Chicago in the first national tour one. And I have two kids. One is now 16 years old, and he has always been a heavy-set kid his whole life. And I'm telling you, he has gone through it, where kids are so mean, you know, and usually they're mean to make themselves feel better. But I got to tell you that my advice to my son was just be kind, you know, and don't fight back at them. Just be kind and know that you're going to get through it. And that sounds like such a Pollyanna thing to say, but I swear to God it gets better. And he is now thriving and has tons of friends, even though he's heavy. He's got his driver's license. He just had a small part on a movie. He played teen number 1. And he found his niche, you know, and he is respected by a lot of kids for just being himself and being kind. So it does get better.
It gets better, and keep your heads up, and don't let anybody keep you down.
Many, many years ago, I was a little boy in the middle of North Dakota, and I took dance classes, and I knew from the very start that I was very, very different. And so did everybody else. And it took them no time at all to realize that they could use it against me. And every day that I went to school, I was scared. I was scared for my life. I was fearful that I'd get beat up, which I did. I was fearful that they'd call me names, which they did. I feared that somehow I'd be found out, and everybody in the world would know about me, and that somehow I'd be isolated and alone forever. And after a while, after they beat me enough, and called me enough names and threw me into enough lockers and told me I was a fag or told me that I was a fairy or that I was fat, something changed because I realized I wasn't going to be any different than who I was. And so I just decided I wasn't going to care anymore. And it did get better. So for all of you who feel alone, who feel like you might not be able to get through it, might not be able to get through that hour of class or through that day of school or another year of school, you can. And I'm here to tell you it does get better.
We're talking about bullies and being gay. Growing up in Minnesota, it was kind of hard to grow up knowing that people suspected that you were different than they were, and people deciding that they knew things about you that you didn't know about yourself yet even, and having them judge you and talk about you behind your back, and sometimes to your face, and sometimes, you know, they would beat you up. And, you know, as you get older, you can decide things about yourself, and you can get to know yourself better. And over the years, I kind of decided some things about myself, and I decided that no one could make me feel inferior without my permission. And I decided that this would pass, and that things would get better. And they did get better. And I moved to New York City, and I found a community that loved and embraced me. And I have a strong community back in Minnesota, too. But, you know, when you find out who you are, no one can take that away from you. And it's important to understand that and to embrace it. And things do get better. My personal advice would be the best revenge is success. And the best kind of success is happiness. And I'm very happy. So just know that it does get better.
It absolutely gets better, and even if you don't change your physical appearance or how you are, how you feel inside will change when you trust the people that you're friends with and you look for people who believe in you. So it gets better, and keep the faith.
It gets better.
My name is Sean Maurice Kelly, and I'm with the Billy Elliot Company as a resident choreographer. Growing up, pretty guarded childhood, but I went to a Catholic school, and I remember about 6th grade walking home and getting harassed by some other teen kids. And that was the beginning of a pretty scarring experience for a couple of years, feeling really intimidated by other kids. I think I knew I was different, and I knew I was coming to terms with coming out. Of course, I didn't at that age, but I was beginning to come to terms with how I felt and my orientation, and that was a really tough time, and I thought the kids were pretty, really significant bullying, made me feel really uncomfortable. I remember talking to my mom about it, and I think she didn't quite know how to deal with it, and for a while I felt pretty much alone. Fortunately, through theater, I found a real community of support, and over the years, ever since I left school, have fortunately felt like I've been really embraced by the theater community and very much accepted, and feel like I've had a good level of success. So looking back on all that, I think for teens that are going through it, I really identify with that experience and how abandoned you feel at that time. But know that through that, you'll probably focus on whatever your passion and your goals are in life, and I think you'll really come out a much better person and sort of rise above that whole experience and be much better off. So I hope you will make that choice because it does get better.
When I was a freshman in college, my father's brother died, and my parents flew to California, where I grew up, to his funeral. But it was peculiar because I never really knew who he was. Like, I barely heard his name in passing, and I never ever met him. And he lived in LA with the rest of my dad's family. Like, they all lived in the same area, and we'd had every holiday together and every family function, and I'd never once met him. And so it was really bizarre, and that was because he was gay, and he was pretty much shunned from the family, although he lived like a few short miles away. So when it came time for me to tell my parents that I was gay, I was worried that I could never tell my father, because he, being the oldest of that family, was probably partially responsible for what happened with his brother. So I'd probably end up like my uncle, and that was the only gay outlet in my family that I knew about. But when I ended up telling him, I discovered that he found out that I was gay long before I did. So by the time I was an adult and was able to tell him about it, he'd gotten over it. And now, and it was so dramatic for me. It was like the world changing, but for him it was like, I'm just so glad you're finally opening up to me and you want that kind of relationship with me. So now, when it comes to relationships and things like that, he's kind of the only person in my family I really can talk to about that kind of stuff. So it's really nice.
Hey, my name is Joel Newsom, and I'm part of the Billy Elliot cast here. And when I found out we were doing this, I wanted to say a few things about my life and what I went through. One time when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I was caught playing with a Barbie doll at a friend of mine's house by her father, and he forbid me to come into their yard. They called my parents, and so when all the kids would go over to Michael and Steve and Tamara's house, I would have to sit on the edge of their yard, and I couldn't cross the street, or I couldn't go into their yard. And there are numerous things like that that happened. I grew up in the 70s, and things like that I think scared me to death about homosexuality and being gay, and you didn't really understand what was going on, but I stuffed it deep, deep down, and I led a straight life for years, for a very, very long time, and I dated women, and then finally it all came rushing back out, and I'm like, I've never dealt with this, and I finally did, and when I did, it was an explosion, and it was amazing. And by this time, everyone's adults, and no one cares, and they're just happy for you, and please, everything gets better. It does get better. So just know that. And I've been through so much stuff in my life that I'm so happy now that I'm just being who I am. And that's it.
Hi, I'm Dan. I'm one of the dressers for Billy Elliot Chicago, and I'm a very out and proud gay man. I was lucky growing up in the 50s and 60s. A small farm town in southern Michigan, where as long as you were a good kid, everybody knew everybody, and they really didn't much care about what you did. I didn't officially come out until I was in my 30s, amidst much angst and worry on my own. I came out to my parents, whose response was, well, yeah, we've always known. So I was lucky. I never had the problems with being harassed. What I have to offer, though, is a different side of my life. Outside of the theater, my other life is as a minister in the United Church of Christ. Now, the stories we hear in the media all seem to be about those churches, the Bible-thumping, hellfire, and brimstone kind of churches that want to tell us how bad we are and how we're sinners and all those kinds of things. Don't believe it. It's not true. We're created in God's image, whatever God means to you. And there are a whole lot of ministers and churches out there that believe that. If you've got a problem, if you're being harassed in any way, whether it's being taunted, physically, whatever, find someone in authority. There are teachers, there are counselors, there are all kinds of organizations, and there are churches, all of whom will accept you exactly as you are. You were created to be a wonderful human being. That's what's important. Don't give up. If you're in a small town, it might be a little harder to find those resources, but get on the internet. We're there. We're here to help. Those of us that have gone through these kinds of things and lived through the days of Stonewall, we know what it's like. Find us. We'll help. There's no reason for you not to take advantage of that help. We're there. Don't give up. It will get better.
I always felt very different. I felt like I didn't fit in. I felt very unique in a bad way. And it was only as I got older and I realized that that's a good thing. When you get away from everything, all the expectations put on you on what everyone thinks you should be or who you should be, and you realize that all you have to do is be who you are, and that's the most wonderful thing that you could possibly do. And I fell in love, and this is my wonderful partner. And
I would agree with that. I mean, when I was in high school, I went to a Catholic high school, so I was afraid to come out, and I didn't at all until later in life, till I was like 20-something. But I realized it was kind of silly, and I should have not wasted any of that time and just really came out and been who I really was that whole time, because there's nothing to be afraid of. I feel like, you have to be strong and you have to be strong and
what you're
that.
feeling
Yeah.
love. That's not bad in any way.
It's not bad at all. There's nothing wrong. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Being who you are,
Yeah, exactly.
being open about it.
And I have to say, I had a friend who I used to perform with who ended up killing himself. Sorry. Okay. But he was gay and had a hard time. His father didn't accept him. He just felt like he had no hope. And he was the most talented, sparkling personality. And I just, if there's anyone that feels how he felt, you have to hold on, you have to keep going, you have to believe that it's going to get better, because it will. It will. Your life is what you create it to be, and even if you're too young to have the freedom right now, you will. So it will. You can make life wonderful. So that's
absolutely, I agree with that.
This is living proof.
Yeah.